Hello Virgo, and welcome to the 2026 horoscope. So this is going to be a nice little overview of the year for you, and obviously last year 2025 was quite pivotal because of the South Node being in your sign and the North Node being in your 7th house, and then of course the eclipses in both Virgo and Pisces, which will have impacted you in quite dramatic karmic ways. So you might be glad to see the back of 2025. I will say that 2026 will probably not be any easier. Don't click off because we do actually have the eclipses returning again. We do have Pisces and Virgo eclipses, but for the last time for a while. So it's not going to be like, oh God, we keep going through this. It's for the last time, and also the South Node is moving out of your sign into Leo, so you won't have that as a pain point anymore. So it's going to be equally as pivotal, but there's also going to be different complexities. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the key themes, the most important 2026 transits, a reflection on 2025. I'm going to do like a very quick overview of the months and break them down, and also talk about the nodes as well. And then eventually I'll talk about all the eclipses, including Pisces and Virgo and Aquarius and Leo. If you are interested in knowing about all the strategic aspects for the year broken down into love, travel, creativity, finance, career and self-development, I do have a PDF that you can download on my website. It's around £10.99 or about $13, 12 euros. It's not expensive, but it does cover all the aspects broken down each month, and I explain how you can use it for strategic advantage, which is something I have a PhD in. And then I've also broken down every single new and full moon and what that will mean for your sign, how it reflects on past energy with that moon, for example, the last time we had that moon, and how that will impact you in a cyclical nature. So holistically, it's a nice overview, and you compare that with this video as well to kind of get an overview of the year if you're interested. I also have readings and whatnot available too. So I'm going to talk about the key themes for you, Virgo. So we will have a rumination on your internal transformation, your intimate relationships, and perhaps a focus on some fear of vulnerability or any fear of trust or betrayal, and any money worries because of Chiron being in Aries. However, it's important to note that Chiron in Aries, which has been there for quite some time now, a few years, will be moving into Taurus, which will be more impactful because that will then impact spirituality and how you're expressing yourself in a purposeful manner. And by that I mean the way that you're turning up into the world and what you're actually doing. So I think that will be also important. Then you have some sudden changes with travel, spiritual awakening, and a little bit more of a, oh, what's going on? A bit more spontaneity with Uranus moving back into Taurus. So we've had Uranus and Taurus the past few years, so this is not new, but it will actually be the last stint it will have in Taurus as well, and then it will move fully into Gemini again next year, which we've already had a bit of a sneak peek of since June 2025 in your 10th house of career and expression. So this will add some volatility or complexity. Again, I say volatility, but it doesn't have to be bad. Uranus does not really discriminate. I don't really see it as a harmonious planet or a malefic planet. It just kind of is what it is. It's neutral. Depends what aspects it's making for it to be either good or bad, but it will bring sudden changes nonetheless. It is a very shocking planet. Then we'll have luck with friendships, community and opportunity because Jupiter will still be in Cancer for the first half of the year until June 30th. So use that energy. Jupiter is not a lottery ticket. It simply makes it easier for you to go after opportunities because it gives a bit of abundance and luck. However, it also expands what house it's in. So in the 11th house, it can also expand issues with feeling lonely or isolation. It can also expand whatever's next to it. So in your birth chart, I always say you should probably bring a birth chart here. Whatever's next to it, it will blow up as well. So just be mindful of that. Also, before I continue, because I always seem to miss this before I start this video, this is geared more towards a Virgo rising because of the house placements, but you can watch for Virgo's sun and moon. You can watch for your sun, for your ambitions and your goals. And if you're a later stage Virgo, you know, you're sort of a little bit older, should we say, and your moon sign for your emotions and your mood, because these will be impacted. And also because of the eclipses in Pisces and Virgo, I would watch just for the moon sign, just generally for that as well. But it is more geared towards Virgo rising. So just keep that in mind, that you might be looking at a chart and you're like, well, that's not accurate because I'm actually a Cancer rising. Well, then I would also watch the Cancer rising one as well, just to kind of pair these together. So I thought I'd mention that as well. Then June the 30th, Jupiter will be moving into Leo in your 12th house. So you deal with some extra manifestation energy in which, you know, Jupiter will expand that, but it will also expand the difficulties of the 12th house of mental health and karma. You don't really need any more expansion of karma, you know? So this is a bit of a difficult one. It's kind of the big fight before you get the win, because of course, whenever Jupiter's in your 12th house, that means that the year after you're going to have Jupiter in your first house. So it's kind of building you up to having the luck. So it also feels like you're waiting in the wings a little bit. This is why I'm saying for the first half of the year, use that energy of Jupiter being in the 11th house of joys and wish fulfillment before it moves into the 12th house, which is much more difficult. Then you'll be aligning with self-care and your sense of duty, working well with others, you know, maybe considering physical health and releasing some trauma and karmic ties or codependency with maternal figures, specifically women. It could be a mother, aunt, sister, a female friend even, maybe even yourself if you're watching as a woman. Because the North Node will be moving out of Pisces into Aquarius, South Node out of Virgo into Leo, right? So that is going to be really important. And of course, when the South Node moves out of Virgo, you're going to really feel less pressure on needing to be perfect and needing to have a sense of I've got everything figured out here. And of course, you will notice that there is this sense of difficulty with the karmic energy as well. So you'll also be focusing a lot more on yourself, you know, and I think this understanding of, okay, I am focusing on myself a little bit more, but it's also going to feel, you know, a little bit heavier. The nodes are not, the thing is, I'm sort of choosing my words carefully here because the nodes are important when it comes to purpose, but they're not as important as people make them out to be. You know, we all have, you know, the nodes will be there roughly for 1.5 to 2 years. So in a birth chart, we all have similar nodes, right? And most people will have a nodal return, for example, or a reverse nodal return in the year. And so it's not like super specific or unique, but it is impactful in the way that we're trying to align ourselves to a certain purpose. So when you have like the North Node moving into your 6th house, for example, well, then you really need to start focusing more on what you want and yourself, but how you balance that with helping others and not being selfish. And then when you have a South Node that's trying to release energy in a house that's hidden and is very foggy and doesn't really like to deal with things because it's too difficult, you know, there's that energy that is there as well. And of course, as we know, Jupiter being in Leo, expanding the 12th house in which the South Node is now there, again, those difficulties are expanded. And again, I'm not doing this horoscope to like make you feel doomed or bad. I'm just being honest. You know, people would probably rake me over the coals if I was like, everything's gonna be fantastic, and then it's not. They'll say I was lying. So I have to be honest because that's just what I do, and it would be a disservice to lie to you or to be puffing it up and saying, oh no, everything's been fantastic. No, 12th house is difficult. I know I have a 12th house stellium. My whole life I've really struggled with feeling any sense of joy, to be honest, you know? So it's never a house that I feel particularly good about. And anyone who's saying it's a good house to have Jupiter or the South Node in is lying to you, basically. It is what it is. Finally, though, just to go off that tangent, you'll be aligning with the right relationship, a rebalance of something you've committed to and your sense of freedom with these eclipses in Virgo and Pisces. And then this rebalance of self-identity and ending a story once and for all with this lunar eclipse full moon in Virgo in your first house of self. So these are recurring themes from 2025. So this is not something new to you. You might be like, oh, here we go again. So this will hit you. I got Pisces moon, so, you know, I don't really escape this either. So this is a recurring theme that you will also notice again as well. Okay, so the most important 2026 transits that I've sort of touched on here is that we have eclipses in both Virgo and Pisces again. Lunar eclipse Virgo in the first house, Pisces in the 7th. You also have eclipses in Aquarius and Leo. So Uranus in Taurus will also be there in the 9th house, and Gemini in the 10th house. Chiron, that wounded healer, the asteroid of trauma, in Aries and Taurus, 8th and 9th. North Node in Aquarius, South Node in Leo, 6th and 12th. And then, as I've mentioned, the South Node moving out of Virgo. And then Jupiter in Cancer, the 11th, moving into the 12th when it moves into Leo. So those are the most important 2026 transits to me. And then let's do a sort of quick reflection on 2025. So of course, as I mentioned about the eclipses with Pisces and Virgo, you had North Node in Pisces 7th house and South Node in Virgo in the 1st house, with the North Node in Pisces in the 7th house, and Saturn also had retrograded back into Pisces as well in the autumn and the 7th house. And then of course the eclipses, there's a big focus on relationships and your sense of identity. You know, this could also be a big legal problem. I had a lot of people I was doing readings for that had legal issues, divorces and whatnot, but a focus on connection, relationships and what you've committed to nonetheless. So that will have impacted you. And again, with the eclipses on a very karmic scale as well, so it's almost like this was meant to be, you have maybe had this feeling of this feels right, or this feels intuitively what I meant to do, even if it's a difficult sort of journey for you. Then Neptune moved into Aries 30th of March 2025 in the 8th house. It moved from Pisces, where it's been there since 2012, in the 7th house for you. So that might have given you a bit more of, you know, the dreamy illusion about relationships, in which you might have had times where you felt very disillusioned and you were like, why is it like this, to, oh, I'm having the best time and this is so romantic and wonderful. And of course, I think that's a bit codependent in my opinion. You can't really see what's going on. It's like, I was here the whole time looking at you, but you didn't really see me. You saw a crafted, curated fantasy version of me, and you didn't really get the real thing. So Neptune Aries is a little bit more violent with trying to punch through the facade. It's more independent as well. In the 8th house, it's still dealing with intimacy. It's still dealing with the rose-tinted glasses of, you know, sexual relationships, and maybe even thinking that I'm really attracted, or it's more lustful, but the commitment or the emotional aspects are not there. And Neptune in Aries also gives you a bit of a pie in the sky ideas about how you can make money too. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but it's a bit more, it's just a bit more careless, shall we say. Then Saturn moved into Aries 30th of May 2025. That moved from Pisces as well. And because Saturn in Pisces in the 7th house will have constricted your relationship, doesn't mean that you had a bad relationship. I know many Virgo risings that had good relationships, but they found difficulties in finding houses. You know, for example, they couldn't find a house because, you know, they wanted to settle down and they couldn't, it's too expensive. Or there was issues with you know, long distance, or emotional aspects a little bit janky. Again, it doesn't end the relationship, it just adds an extra layer of where is this relationship really going. And Saturn in Pisces also can give a little sense of, you know, wanting to be carefree, but also saying I have to be kind of mature. It's a bit Peter Pan syndrome at times. Saturn in Aries is much more trying to put a lasso around a bull and then pull it back, in the 8th house again as well. So a bit of constriction with finances and investments and savings. For example, if you have something like stocks and shares, you might find that you were not gaining as much interest because there's some kind of harsh lesson that you need to learn. Maybe like, maybe I shouldn't put money in this particular pot, I need to diversify that. You could also learn the hard way, especially with Neptune in Pisces previously, about intimacy and relationships, and what you actually are tolerating, and the sense of what real intimacy is to you as well, because Saturn in the 8th house as well can constrict that, and that it can make you quite avoidant, or you can feel like you're chasing something, you know, chasing some kind of intimacy that when you finally get it, it's not what you really want. You know, you never want what you really want, that kind of energy. And Saturn in Aries is quite a debilitated placement. Then Saturn moved back into Pisces in autumn. I believe it was about September. And that will then cause a bit more constriction in the relationship house, and then in and out, in and out. If you have your Saturn in Aries in your birth chart, then you'll be having your Saturn return, and that will be underway properly 2026 as well. Then Jupiter moved into Cancer June the 9th in your 11th house, bringing some opportunity and abundance to friendships and maybe even relationships too, especially more sort of flippant ones, more like casual, should we say. With mentorships as well, networking. It's very much, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and expanding that. And of course, as I mentioned, Jupiter can also expand a void or a loneliness in that area too. So you might have felt more lonely, isolated, or you might have I really do need to gain more friendships, so I need a sense of community around me, or I'm isolated where I am. So it can be a bit twofold basically. I always say Jupiter is a malefic but also a benefic in my eyes, so it's kind of a bit of both. Then Uranus moved into Gemini from Taurus July the 7th. So this is hitting the 9th and 10th house from these two, because they're going to be switching here and there, going in 2026 as well. Uranus, the planet of shock and innovation, as I mentioned, hitting those elements. And because of Gemini from Taurus with the 10th and 9th house, giving you innovation in your career, especially if you work in technology or you have some kind of domain over trying to, you know, change things up in a more meaningful, unique way. Okay, so I'm going to flick through the months. I'm going to try and keep this really short because, like I mentioned, I have most of my specific aspects in my PDF. I also don't want to make these videos too long. And I'm trying to be fair with all the zodiac signs because I want to make sure that I'm being equitable, that I'm not talking too much from one side and not the other. So in January, the most notable thing, I don't have a script, by the way, so I'm literally just going down. So forgive me if I'm like looking around. Chiron direct in Aries, January the 2nd in your 8th house will get you to deal with the trauma of the 8th house, with that vulnerability and trust and betrayal very actively. So you're literally tangibly doing things. You're confronting people. You're really just doing something. New moon in Capricorn, January the 18th, the 5th house. This is really successful new moon as well in the 5th house of joy, creativity, dating. This is really beautiful for a new start. Capricorn, of course, is like the boss bitch. This is really good for expressing yourself creatively as well. Capricorn, you know, sometimes it's not known for expression, but it actually is a very expressive sign as well in the 10th house, especially when it's expression to do with, you know, wanting to feel validated or wanting to just put yourself out there because you want to be seen for something. So with the 5th house, it's really good for creativity, or again, being a bit more assertive with dating prospects. As I mentioned already, Neptune enters Aries January the 26th in that 8th house as well, bringing a little bit of fog to intimacy. Then February, yeah, Uranus direct in Taurus, February the 4th, 9th house. I mean, I'm going to put this on screen so you can kind of see for yourself. Mercury in Pisces, February the 6th and 7th house. Mercury is debilitated in Pisces. So even though you would say that Mercury in the 7th house is good for communicating your love, in Pisces, it's difficult to get the words out. So it's much better to do something more creative, write a letter, take time to get the words out, basically. Don't just blurt it out. Venus in Pisces, February the 10th in the 7th house, beautiful. Venus exalted in Pisces in the 7th house brings so much harmony to relationships. And yeah, it's just really beautiful. I like this energy a lot. And it's funny because it's a few days before Saturn enters Aries, so it's still in Pisces in the 7th house. You're kind of on the cusp where Saturn enters Aries February the 14th on Valentine's Day in the 8th house for you. Saturn won't constrict that house of relationships, so then Venus in Pisces can do its magic a little bit more. But again, it will add a bit of a lesson to the 8th house. Again, it doesn't always have to be a harsh lesson. Don't see it as the worst thing in the world. I am Saturn ruled. I think it's also a maturity, a maturation, a thing of committing to that as well. So again, you could be really getting quite serious about money and investments, for example, especially with the way the economy is. It's always good to have a bit of safety there. We will have a solar eclipse new moon in Aquarius February the 17th in your 6th house. I will talk about that later, so I'm just going to brush past this. But that will impact everybody with this new cycle of eclipses. Venus in Pisces conjunct North Node in Pisces February the 18th in your 7th house. Really beautiful. This is like purposeful relationship energy. This is like, I just know intuitively what I want. This is quite fated energy with that North Node in Pisces as well, which will be continued throughout the year because of the eclipses. Again, I'm not trying to plug this by any means, like I really don't care, but I do go into detail about this in the PDF. Like I said, I wanted to actually do these full videos, but I ended up filming one and it was 4 hours long, and I cannot do that because I have a full-time job. It takes time to edit them. I don't have a script. I just didn't want to do it. So much easier for me to get my words out when I can actually sit down and write it. Sagittarius Mercury, you know, I'm trying to work to my strengths here. So it is quite fated, this energy. Sun in Pisces, February the 18th on the same day, moving into the 7th house too. So February is a real, you know, it's so talk about Valentine's Day, but it's a real concentration of the 7th house of relationships. If you're not interested in relationships and you're like, Abigail, I don't care, then it's just something you're committed to. It can be a contract for work. It can be something where you're getting serious about something. It's very old school as well. So it just feels like you're not being flippant with anything. You're not being like, yeah, YOLO, you know, I just do whatever. It's like, I'm actually going to commit to things. Saturn conjunct Neptune, Aries, at 0 degrees, February the 20th, 8th house. This is super important because this is the ultimate creation degree. We have not had this kind of conjunction in, it's contested about when it last was, but from what I can tell from my research, it's like 7000 BC. So, you know, it's like the start of a civilization, basically. So this is really pivotal, not only for you, but also the world. In the 8th house, this new start with intimacy. This complete rebirth, right? Because the 8th house is about rebirth, and then, you know, this new start. It's like the death card because it's like a new start and change, and you have this creation degree. For some of you that are interested in like having children, this is good energy for conceiving a child, but also just having this new start is really good for you, especially, like I said, because the eclipses that will be in your first house of this new identity that you're becoming. I'm feeling good about it too. Mercury retrograding into Pisces February 26th in that 7th house again. So, you know, I'm kind of repeating myself here. Again, Mercury debilitated in Pisces, so when it's retrograding, even worse. There could just be some arguments or difficulties with relationships here, so just be careful about your words and be mindful. March transits, Mars enters Pisces, March the 2nd, 7th house. So again, 7th house is here. Mars and Pisces I don't really like. Mars needs a strategic warrior. It needs a dragon to do the death. And Pisces is too much of a madman to do that. Too emotional. Thinks from emotions too much. And Pisces means, like I said, I'm not dogging on it. But in the 7th house, this brings strong sex drive, very emotional, intimate as well. But at the same time, it's a bit of a, I want to be motivated by relationships. I want to be motivated to commit and actually do something and also trust myself. But, you know, it's like, kind of fits, it's like fits and drives, like, oh, I'm going up and down. I don't really know what I'm doing with motivation. It's also quite funny as well because it's like your day before the lunar eclipse forming in Virgo in your first house of self. So you might feel like this is a very, you know, rageful kind of ending for you. Again, this is a full moon, so it's not a new start. It's a supercharged full moon. And again, I'll talk about it in a minute, in the first house of self. So putting those two together, it's like this release of the relationship, this release of what you're committing to in yourself with your identity. Also, it might just be a, I'm letting go of toxicity karmically with that 7th house of like open enemies and people like just playing in your face as well. March the 6th, Venus moves into Aries in the 8th house, so bring some harmony to, as I mentioned, intimacy, but also investments. And again, it cooperates that new rebirth for you as well with that first house forming in Virgo. Venus conjunct Saturn and Neptune, Aries, March the 7th, in the 8th house for you. So this is, again, impactful. Venus is much more benefic. Saturn and Neptune, you know, it's like, you know, if it was like Venus conjunct Jupiter, I'd be like, yay, but with Saturn, I'm like, I don't really know about that one. This will bring harmony, but also it's, again, commitment and a sense of, I'm really going to have this new start. With this aspect, it's just supercharged new start, supercharged rebirth for you. Jupiter will then be direct in Cancer, March 11th in your 11th house, so more tangible look and opportunity with friendships. Mars in Pisces conjunct North Node in Pisces, 7th house for you. Again, this is important because, you know, that North Node in Pisces, which is purposeful, and then Mars in Pisces giving you that motivation, even though if it is a bit diluted, it's still going to be, we're really focusing on relationships. And then March 19th, new moon in Pisces, 7th house. So can you see there's so much energy on commitment and relationships for you? It's just really, really strong. That new moon in Pisces, which is good for manifestation, you know, really getting that energy there. It's always absolutely utterly devastating when you know somebody that has these placements and you're like, why are they having a good year and I'm not? You know, it's like, this is not fair. So anyway, I'll put that aside. Mercury would thus be direct in Pisces, then March 20th in the 7th house, Venus entering Taurus March 30th in the 9th house. April, forming in Libra, April 2nd in the 2nd house, releasing some kind of debt or financial plan or feeling of self-worth. Mars moves into Aries where it's domicile, April 9th in the 8th house, much more motivation for interests, savings and investments and intimacy, and again, that rebirth that I mentioned. And also because Mars is conjunct Neptune in Aries, April 13th in the 8th house as well. So you kind of have the delusion to really pull that off as well. New moon in Aries, April 17th in the 8th house, in which Mercury will also be in Aries. So a lot of that transformation and rebirth energy coming through again as well. Also Mars conjunct Saturn as well, so getting very serious about it. Venus and Uranus in Gemini at the end of April in the 10th house, bringing both harmony and innovation to your career or the way you're expressing yourself. Could be changing your appearance up during this time, or just feeling like I want to emerge into the world in a different way because of the rebirth that we had with identity. Okay, so May, we have full moon Scorpio, May the 1st and the 3rd house ruled by Mercury, which is what rules Virgo. So releasing some kind of communication project or duty, because we know Virgo is always going, always on the grind. Mars conjunct Chiron in Aries, May 16th and the 8th house is interesting to me because, of course, the 8th house I mentioned, you know, the house of sort of loss and transformation. So this is why I'm mentioning it. Mars giving motivation to Chiron, which is that wounded healer. So you really make a stride with trauma and healing here, especially with vulnerability and trusting a relationship or trusting yourself. And it feels like you can actually not only have this new start, this rebirth, but you can trust that it's going to be something that you're going to pull off. Because often we make like resolutions for the year, for example, and then we just kind of forget about them in a month. But in this aspect, if you can really commit to saying, I'm going to do this, you'll build trust in yourself, which then helps you feel more stable in your nervous system, which is important for you with the North Node in Aquarius moving into your 6th house. Mercury entering Gemini and then conjunct Uranus in Gemini in the 10th house. Again, really perfect time to present, because of course Mercury rules Gemini and Mercury rules you as well, so this is going to make your communication feel enhanced. You just feel more settled in yourself with your words, and so this is fantastic for doing a presentation, having a job interview, for example, or showing why you're unique and different to other people. Yeah, okay. June, Venus conjunct Jupiter in Cancer, June the 9th, 11th house. We had this last year, beautiful energy. This is when you can, you know, Jupiter needs something benefic like Venus to really combine and enhance its energy. In the 11th house, beautiful opportunities, friends, social gatherings. If you can get out on this day, do something, go to a party, or just simply see a friend, do something nice. Don't isolate yourself. Venus enters Leo, June the 13th and 12th house. Very loyal energy here. This again, it's quite a personal energy as well, so this is a little bit more isolating, which is why I mentioned about the Venus conjunct Jupiter, because you might want to isolate yourself a little bit more after this. Chiron enters Taurus, June 19th and the 9th house, the sticking point of focusing on perhaps religious trauma or spirituality. And also this focus on, you know, studying and higher education as well. Maybe even traveling. Maybe feeling like trapped, for example. Mars entering Gemini, June 28th in the 10th house, which brings some motivation to your career. But Mars in Gemini is truly the madman whose ideas are never accepted. So this is quite literally, oh, wow, there's a war going on. I'm going to distract them. Quick, act the fool. That's the kind of energy. Mars in Gemini. I know a Gemini Mars. Interesting fellow. A good example of Gemini Mars is Mike Tyson. Bidding off a man's ear. Then Jupiter enters Leo June 30th in the 12th house as well, as I mentioned. So that will no longer bring the abundance to the 11th house for you. Then July, Neptune retrograding into Aries, July 7th in the 8th house. So a little bit more of the consideration of that rebirth that we've been talking about. Venus moves into Virgo, July 9th, the 1st house. So this is bringing harmony to your sense of self, magnetism and attractive energy. Venus in Virgo is debilitated, so just be mindful of that. It's quite picky, but it's also quite good in the 1st house because you're a little bit more critical of your appearance and what you do. So if you're wanting to really perfect something, it's a good time for that. Also just to note, when I talk about moons and they're like mutable moons, for example, so anything from Sagittarius, Pisces, Virgo and Gemini, then they will impact you because they'll either be in your 1st, 7th, 4th or 10th house. And of course I put the degrees here as well, so look at your birth chart. If you have anything from, for example, like 0 to 9 degrees, then it will impact you more than if you had it at like 29 degrees. So just be mindful of that when I talk about the moons. Venus entering Libra, August 6th in the 2nd house. Beautiful energy and harmony for money and finances, which is really lovely. Solar eclipse, new moon in Leo, August 12th in the 12th house. Okay, I'll come to talk about this. This will be quite impactful for you. And then, of course, lunar eclipse forming in Pisces, August 28th in the 7th house. And this is the last eclipse of the year. And it also be the last eclipses in Pisces and Virgo for quite some time. So you'll be like, this is the big release I needed with the commitment, and then I can move on and do something different. September, Venus enters Scorpio September 10th in your third house, bringing some nice energy or to communication, but it's also a bit of a, you know, a bit of a spicy energy. It's kind of like dirty talk, if that makes sense as well. We also have Mercury entering Libra, Uranus retrograde in Gemini in the 10th house. A lovely new moon in Virgo, September 11th in the first house. It is not an eclipse. So this is, again, really taking all the things you learned from the eclipses and wrapping it up in this one nice gift and moving on. And then also Mars entering Leo, Mercury entering Scorpio, September 30th in the third house ruled by Mercury again, so it's quite nice. However, it's important to note as we move on to October, we will have a Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, October 24th in the third house, which will hit you, because any Mercury retrograde is always going to be impactful for Mercury ruled signs like Virgo and Gemini, but in the third house, which is actually ruled by Gemini and Mercury itself, is a little bit more difficult. And Scorpio, very much detective energy. It's tripping over your words. It's like, I've got the receipts. Venus retrograding at the same time as Scorpio as well. So it's just really picking apart and feeling very like, it's overthinking energy, and Virgo's already overthink. So it could feel a little bit cerebral October and November, because in November, Mercury will only go direct in Scorpio November the 13th in the third house as well. Full moon in Gemini, which will hit you 10th house November 24th as well. Mars enters Virgo in your first house itself November 25th. This is what I call the strategic warrior. So this is not like Mars and Gemini who's the fool. This is a person that will get the job done and knows exactly where to put who on the battlefield. So this is very good for planning. It will bring some motivation and a bit of a fire up your ass, but it also can make you a little bit more angry. So you might feel a bit more sort of fiery, and because the sun in Sagittarius at the same time, it's a bit like, ooh, I'm really feeling the energy here. I'm supercharged. New moon in Sagittarius in your fourth house. New start for home and family before we start 2027. Then Saturn and Neptune direct in Aries in the 8th house. So this is where we really start to, you know, we put the tangible plans in action for this rebirth, which is really good as well. And then we finally end the year with Mercury entering Capricorn on Christmas Day in the 5th house for you, which will allow you to communicate your creative ideas really well. Good for dating, especially like on a dating app, for example, because we can look at Mercury with the 3rd house, for example, of social media and dating apps, and the 5th house of dating. And also it's just good for expressing yourself to the public meaningfully as well. That was probably way longer than I want it to be, but I'm being a bit longer with both Leo and Virgo at the moment so far, because they're a bit more important. Not to say that those signs are not important. If you're watching as another sign, it doesn't mean they're not important. It's just because as I'm doing these, I'm refining what I'm learning and knowing and being like, actually, I want to talk more about this. So I'm going to rank the months based on what I think is important subject. So January is the best month for having more fun and living life on your own terms. February is the best month for intimacy and focusing on what you want to commit to. March is the best month for releasing a personal narrative and defining a new you know, that rebirth we talked about. April is the best month to focus on your career, ambitions, and your self-expression if you're retired, for example. May is the best month to focus on a bit of everything. You know, there's a lot of energy here, so have hands in lots of pots. June is the best month to focus on friendships and also defining those social opportunities before Jupiter moves into a sign which might constrict it and expand isolation. The hermit energy, basically. July is the best month for harmony and doing what you need for you, which is important, Virgo. August is the best month to release ties with a commitment or relationship. September is the best month to focus on internal work and transformation. Again, wrapping up all that rebirth into a nice, neat bow. October is the best month to choose your words carefully and journal, because those retrogrades. November is the best month to be motivated and start focusing on speaking your truth authentically. And then December is, funny enough as it coincides with Christmas time, if you celebrate that, it's the best month for taking time off and feeling a sense of home, basically. And I also want to talk about the nodes, because it is impactful that, you know, the South Node is moving out of your sign. So we have the North Node in Aquarius and South Node in Leo, July 27th, 2026 to March 26th, 2028. So the North Node moves into the 6th house and the South Node into the 12th house. So like I said, these move from your 7th and 1st house to 6th and 12th. So the North Node, which is a little bit more of the spiritual direction, I'm not going to say it's purpose, it can be, but I'm going to call it the spiritual direction of travel. The sixth house, which is more about duty, but also the balance between what you want to give to other people and what you want to do for yourself. In the south node in the 12th house, which is focusing a little bit more on you, isolation, meditation. I've done a lot of work on nodes and how these reflect past lives. So in a past life, for example, and this is if you had like a nodal return, so you had a natal north node in 6th and south node in 12th. I'm going to talk about that, how it translates into this whole transit, is that basically if you had a south node in Leo, you were most likely some kind of king or queen in a past life, and you really were like really enjoying yourself. You know, you were rich, the life was good, the living was easy. It's memories of a king, basically. So when the north node moves into Aquarius, that person, or us as a collective, have to learn that we're not those people anymore. So this is moving from hyper-consumerism, for example, to understanding this is ridiculous, right? So it's not capitalistic, it's not it's not independent, it is focusing on a collective, right? Because Aquarius is about community and collective energy. So when you have the north node in the 6th house, you're focusing on, with the Aquarius energy, what you can do for others and how you can serve others in the best way. But you also must learn to balance that with what you want, because the south node in the 12th house will release this feeling of having to be some kind of martyr or slave. The 12th house, to me, is the most self-sacrificing house. And again, I have a 12th house stellium, and my purpose in my life, if I don't help people, I only serve my own interests, I would feel unfulfilled. Right? I have to help people. I have to be giving some kind of wisdom or helping people on their journey, right? That's what I know I would do. That's why that when people do that whole Buddhist thing when they say, if you were the only person left on the world, what would you do? I'm like, well, I don't know, because I don't know what the purpose would be. Because the purpose is to help people. So if it's just me, I'd just pass away. I don't care, you know? So the south node in the 12th is kind of talking about that. Again, when we go through the astrological wheel, I'll maybe try and put a little picture up. We have the 6th house, right? So when we look at the, the southern horizon here, everything down here is very selfish or independent. It's not bad. It just means that you're more internal focused on you. But as we get to the 6th house, it's the beginning of serving the public and being more outwardly serving, right? So the 6th house is where we begin. It's the house of duty. In traditional astrology, it was the house of slavery. But that just means that, you were helping others and you were giving and giving and giving, but you weren't taking much, And as we go through, we start to serve. We go through serving our transformation, our spiritual. We quite literally give bodily pleasure. Then we give spiritual insight. Then we develop the world. Then we build a community. And then finally, with the 12th house, we are self-sacrificial. We're a martyr, basically. So you release that energy of having to do everything for others and actually focusing more on yourself. So again, this nodal transit for you will be getting the balance correct on that. And it really is important for you, of course, because as we know, Virgo rules the 6th house as well. So it is important to feel like you're contributing in the right way, but also that there is a nice balance between give and take as well. Okay, so let's look at the solar eclipse new moon in Aquarius taking place February the 17th in your 6th house at 28 degrees. So this is the first sort of cycle of eclipses that we'll have in Aquarius and Leo. So this is the 3rd decan of Aquarius, ruled by both the moon and Venus, which is a Libra triplicity. So it's quite emotional, it's quite judgmental as well. So this eclipse will, the messages of this eclipse will translate to everybody, but I'm going to tailor it to you specifically with this house and how I think you're feeling in this moment. So, especially in February, because there's so much focus on the 7th house around this time for you, as I mentioned. So you need to be very patient with your feelings during this time. In the 6th house, which is quite a self-deprecating house, and like I said, Virgo rules it, it feels a little bit like a midlife crisis or a feeling of I don't really know where I stand in a situation. It can feel like you can work and work and work, but you never get the success from it. So this particular decan is associated with the 7 of Swords in tarot. And if you know anything about this particular tarot card, is that it's quite a manipulative, deceptive card. It kind of feels like I can see the arrow coming towards me, but I need to duck and dive. You need to be resourceful and think on your feet. People say, think fast, phew, throw something at you, like, whoa. It's kind of like that. You have to try and outsmart somebody. Virgos are very smart, because Mercury is, come on, you're smart. You just know. Every Virgo I've met is ridiculously smart. They're like geeky, like Sheldon smart. And I'm just like, God, I want to learn from you. They're really smart. But Because of that, you can outsmart others. In the 6th house, there's a sense of somebody trying to get in your head, or you trying to get into somebody else's head, and also watching how people work on a psychological level. Interesting, it always makes me think about narcissism, because the 6th house of give and take, in which you feel like you run yourself ragged trying to help others, and then some narcissistic leech kind of takes away from you. This can also be in a relationship as well, because as I mentioned with the 7th house energy in February, that could be that there's some kind of like, maybe even an ex, for example, or even like a, you know, somebody you're trying to divorce or just get out of your life. You're like, you're really testing me here. This can also be co-workers as well in that 6th house, where you're like trying to really get one over. And I've had this before with people where I'm like, they don't appear like there's any problem, or people think, oh my god, they're such a nice person, and you're like, I see through you and you're trying to manipulate me. So that energy is quite strong with this eclipse as well. So it's a bit of a dicey, bit of a sneaky and deceptive, underhanded kind of eclipse as well. Again, remember, eclipses are supercharged as well, so it will not only bring a bit of a fated energy there, but it'd be like, whoa, this is a bit powerful, this is a bit supercharged. Jupiter in Cancer in the 11th house, also trining the North Node in Pisces in the 7th house, as we can see. And, you know, this is the alignment of these water signs. And again, this is a nice trine, but at the same time, that North Node in Pisces in the 7th house, you're trying to understand what you can do, how you can serve your relationships. But there is a sense of, you know, the status quo is being rocked because the Sun and Moon in Aquarius in the 6th house, squaring Uranus and Taurus in the 9th house. Spiritually and in a purpose way, you just want to break away. You might want some freedom during this time, or you might be like, you know, you're trying to manipulate me. This energy is not great. I need some time to relax. Again, running yourself ragged perhaps in that 6th house, and you just need some time to go on holiday or have some leisure time. You need to be prepared for some unexpected shifts during this eclipse as well in your personal circumstances that actually may require you to take time off. So this is why I mentioned at the start of the reading that we need to be really really focused on getting the alignment with your, you know, your give and take energy with your physical health in the 6th house, basically, which again is very impactful. Okay, next one we have a lunar eclipse, full moon, Virgo in your 1st house. This is very impactful, and this is taking place March the 3rd. So 2nd decan of Virgo, ruled by Venus and Saturn, which is a Capricorn triplicity. These two are like opposites, but it's kind of like a strong commitment. Again, it's also that mix of the relationship and commitment energy that I talked about previously. So this is a supercharged release of an identity or a narrative or a story about you that you have built up over the past 2 to 3 years. So this could be releasing a person in your life that has made you feel a certain way about your identity. This can be changing your appearance quite drastically, but it can also be this heavy feeling on your shoulders. This is a really successful decan, actually. So this is not a bad full moon. It's very karmic, but it's a nice release that you feel good about. So this is associated with the 9 of Pentacles, which is very positive. It's actually very open. And this is taking place in March as well, which I talked a lot about, the 8th house rebirth. And 8th house is very, you know, it's very vulnerable, doesn't like to be super open with things. It can be very open sexually and, you know, more in that sort of way, but it's quite hidden and a little bit distrusting. So this is actually very open, and you feel more open to the new prospects that are coming to you and actually trusting yourself, as I mentioned. It's very positive. It's plutonic, which is great. So this is about your hard work paying off, and you karmically feel like I'm ready for this new start because I've put so much work in and it's felt so hard. It's felt like such an uphill struggle that I can now just have more of an easier time. So you might feel like attached to the struggle. You might feel attached to the struggle or the grief, and you want to keep going with that. But actually, it's the time for success. It's a time for this new rebirth as well. And also to receive energy as well, not just give, but actually receive and not be suspicious about people helping you with your identity and helping you with your goals as well. And you need to love yourself. You need to really love yourself. Sun and Mercury in Pisces in the 7th house, trining Jupiter in Cancer in the 11th house. So with that regard, there's this bridge between the emotional needs of your relationships and what you're committing to this new start, and also how you want to show up in the world in the best way possible, right? and how you're serving the community, but also, again, serving yourself. It has to be that, as I talked about with the nodes changing soon, because the nodes are still in, the South Node's still in your sign, that we want to focus on that balance of, I want to help others by helping myself and not being stretched too thin. Jupiter and Cancer in the 11th house, also sextiling the Moon and Virgo in the first house, of course. And this is going to be important because it almost expands and propels a strengthening of your emotions regarding this new start as well. So prioritizing your health and wellness, prioritizing your own self-care, and also making sure that you are focusing on self-improvement and addressing those issues consistently as well. And you know, it's also just important to mention as well that it's taking place at 12 degrees in the second decan, as I mentioned, so anything from 10 to 19 degrees of Virgo will impact you. Okay, so the next eclipse we have is Leo, August the 12th, a total solar eclipse, new moon in Leo, supercharged new moon in the 12th house for you, taking place at 20 degrees. So anything from 20 to 29 degrees of Leo will impact you. So this is very transformational. I mean, very transformational. This is basically a new moon that is almost like, I feel like it's fighting with yourself. So with this third decan of Leo, we're looking at the Seven of Wands, which is incredibly competitive. It is a rivalry, and it is being assertive, standing up for yourself, feeling a little bit defensive because you feel like you're under attack, but also trying to take the higher ground at the same time. You are not going to let people walk over you or take advantage of you. With that 12th house, this could be somebody coming at you that you do not see, because the 12th house can be an enemy that you will not see. So it's really important to trust your intuition, have the chakras up, because karmically this energy with this eclipse is, if I stand up and I don't let others take advantage of me and treat me like a doormat, then I'm healing a wound in myself, right? I'm healing a wound. If we look at the nodes as well, South Node and Virgo at 0 degrees, right? You are releasing that energy of needing to be something that you're not in the first house, right? You are actually standing up and focusing on your strength, your personal strength. And you also are being very passionate about that. You can also see a bit of a kite formation as well. So we have a grand air trine for Pluto in Aquarius to Uranus in Gemini to Venus in Libra to Pluto in Aquarius, so grand air trine. We also have two kite formations. We have one on its side, as you can see, you have a kite on the left hand side and another turn upside down. A kite formation in astrology is generally very transformational, but to have two, you know, like I say, with this grand air trine is really, really important. So it's going to be with all that air energy, it is a almost bouncing of logical energy. So this is not illusion, even in the 12th house seems delusional. It's not. It's a new start that feels logical, and it feels like, okay, I'm not just going to sit back and do nothing. I'm going to actually do something. I've got a plan, right? So it's a very strong assertive energy, especially with Leo, which of course rules the 5th house. It rules the heart. So this is passionate. It's personal. I'm not sitting on my hands with this one. With the 12th house as well, this can be a brand new start with manifestation. I'm going to go with it. Sometimes you can be crying and screaming, saying, "Fuck, I'm going to get what I want." You know, really screaming about it. But be confident, because Mercury in Leo is about having conviction. As you can see, we have Mercury in Leo in a 4-degree orb of Jupiter in Leo, expanding that. Mercury in Leo is just super, super personal, right? This is words are taken personally. I will get angry and I will get defensive. Double check that Mercury retrograde in Leo in 2025, which is absolutely awful, right? Again, because it rules the heart. Then with the sun and moon next to it as well, and then the South Node at 0 degrees in your sign. Mars in Cancer as well, crying and screaming energy. Get it all out. Get it all out, literally. Treat it like, you know, a total purge. It's a new moon, not a full moon, but it also feels like, I'm ready for a fight. You want to fight? You know, I feel like putting in the little clip from Only God Forgives from the Nicholas Winding Refn film, where it's like, want to fight? That energy. Then finally, we have a partial lunar eclipse forming in Pisces in your 7th house, taking place at 4 degrees. This is the last eclipse of the year, thank God. Also the last one in Pisces as well. This is the final release of the relationship, commitment, contract, whatever you please energy. It's very karmic. Again, any full moon in Pisces is going to be difficult, but when it's the lunar eclipse, yes. It's not a total lunar eclipse, it's partial. Doesn't really matter. It is still really impactful for you. In the first decan of Pisces as well, feels very like a disappointed energy. I feel like I'm in a fairy tale haze. So in that, the delusion wears off and you fully release something that you know you need to release. We're putting all of that package of the rebirth in one. This is associated with the Eight of Cups, which is kind of what I just said. It's walking away from something you thought was going to work out and feeling quite disappointed about it. This can be a relationship in that 7th house, especially because we've had this narrative going throughout the year and also last year too. But also it can be just something you thought, you had your heart set on basically, just like I had my heart set on this and it's just not going to work for me. This is really, really spiritual. It is trusting yourself and understanding that this is not going to be something that can just be glossed over. It's going to hurt. It's going to feel strong for me. But once it's done, I can move on. So it is like a necessary evil for you. And it feels very deep. The word deep is going to be strong here. I feel very deep here. And I do feel kind of like I've lost faith in it. You might feel like I've lost faith in love or something like that. I feel a bit hurt. I feel a bit let down. But I know that I can move on from this as well. And like I said, there will be a Virgo new moon immediately after this one as well, in the 5th house, which is a recurring theme from earlier in the year, but also it's a new start with fun and creativity and just dating, maybe even like setting your sights on. Again, for some of you, this could be the ending of like a divorce, for example, and then moving on to a new prospect, but it can also be, I just want to have more excitement. And again, it's an interesting recurring theme as well because it's in the 2nd decan as well, which is of course the 9 of Pentacles, which is successful. So then you have this new energy and the kite formation is actually going to be back. So you have to take action because of that as well. So that eclipse energy will impact you. And as I mentioned, this Virgo new moon will impact you too. Because we have this grand air trine back between Pluto, Uranus, and Venus as well. Okay, so those eclipses are really going to impact you. Again, if you'd like to know a little bit more information about all the moons and you know, your strategic aspects, you can check the PDF in my description, in my biography. And if you enjoyed that, please let me know. Drop a little like or comment on what you're interested in. Just to wrap it all up, this is going to be a very impactful year for you, Virgo, because of the eclipses, because of the nodes moving out of your sign into Leo. And to the fixed signs, moving from the mutable. And of course, there's going to be, again, some very strong karmic energy. But it really feels like once we've done this, we've done it. I've seen this for quite a lot of zodiac signs. It feels like next year is once we win this fight, I can go to bed, you know, I can just relax. So it's kind of like one last round. And after that, we can move on. It's not a bad year by any means. It's just a little bit more challenging in certain areas because of this 12th house and 6th house energy. That is a big focal point for you. But everybody experiences astrology differently. It's just an influence. You still have free will. You can still manifest. You can still do whatever you want. Sometimes you look at a chart and say, "Well, nope." You know, it's not something that is like puppet strings, you have to do this. It's just a guide. Astrology is just a way to understand yourself and to give you a bit of strategic advantage in life. It is not a crystal ball in which I tell you this and suddenly you're cursed and I'm public enemy number 1. I get people telling me, you told me this, you promised me this, why do you do this to me? And I'm like, A, I've not done anything to you, and B, people don't understand what comments like that do, because they kind of take it on personally where I'm like, have I hurt this person? So just remember that astrology is just an influence. Anyway, I'll stop ranting and I hope you have a generally lovely 2026 and I will speak to you soon. Bye.